So here is the English version about the content in the Danish video. And the Danish video today was about the trauma cycle. Just like the narcissist have a narcissistic cycle, you know, the love bombing and the idolizing, and then they devalue you, and then they discard you. Well, our traumas also have a trauma cycle. And this, of course, goes for unhealed traumas. So, here's the cycle. The first thing in the cycle is triggers. And then come the emotional pain. And then there is coping mechanism. After that, there's a temporary relief. And then all of this has some negative consequences. And the cycle ends with shame and guilt. And you probably sit and think, oh my God, please explain something about all this. And of course I will. The triggers are something someone says or does, or maybe it's a smell or a sound or something that reminds you of something traumatic. And then you feel this pain because the trigger is bounded to some kind of emotional pain. And the pain can be fear or anger or sadness or low self-worth or anxiety. And then you have this coping mechanism. And the coping mechanism is, of course, something toxic. So it can be that you use substances for relieving yourself, or self-harm, or perhaps you overeat, or something like that. You get the picture. And this gives this temporary relief, where you for a little while feel, I can't feel anything. There's this kind of emotional timeout. And after that, there's negative consequences, of course, because the temporary relief is something that's not healthy for you. You do something that's not healthy for you, so of course it has these negative consequences. And after that, you feel all this shame and guilt, because when you face these negative consequences, then you feel so ashamed and so guilty. You know, like if you do what I did a lot. When I was in emotional pain, I was eating to numb the pain. And in the end, I felt so ashamed over myself. So perhaps you can put it all together if I paint this picture for you. Anyway, the trauma cycle will keep repeating unless you heal it. That's the thing. So you will keep going over and over and over this cycle again until you heal the stuff inside of you that made this trauma. Yeah. And when something is triggered in us, we have this intense emotional reaction. And as I said, you have this unhealthy coping mechanism. And the problem is, because everything is so unhealthy and toxic inside of you, you feel like you're stuck in this. So, again, a trauma cycle begins with someone or something triggering you. And then there's these consequences. And the thing is with trauma, that it can be something that you know you have, but it can also be in your unconscious mind. Some of us goes around with trauma we didn't even know we had. Because the thing is, when something really, really painful happens to you, it could be so overwhelming that you put it away. So, some of it we know, some of it we don't know. Well, people often ask, what could the triggers be? But the problem is that there's not a list in these triggers, because it's different from person to person. The same with trauma. Some people can have the same experience, and one will be traumatized, another one will be, well, life goes on. So, regarding triggers, I cannot make a list for you, but if you have this intense emotion when something happens and it feels like fear or anxiety, then it's probably something to do with trauma. Yeah. So all those overwhelming emotions, well, those are often linked to a unhealthy coping mechanism. Yeah. So if you overreact to something, or you feel like you want to hurt yourself, do some self-harm to cope with this overwhelming pain, or if you want to overeat or stuff like that, then it's probably connected to a trauma. And I think that since you sit here on this TikTok channel where I make content about narcissism, probably have something that's not in balance inside, and you probably sit with some sort of trauma. Yeah. So there's something there. So if you use something to numb the pain, then I don't need to tell you that that's very unhealthy, right? You already know that. Yeah. And again, if you don't heal this trauma, you will just repeat this cycle every time. And some people actually sit and think, well, I don't think I have trauma, but again, as I said in the other sound video, unless you have a really calm life with healthy, loving people and stuff like that, then you probably have a trauma, an unhealed trauma. So the thing is, when we do this unhealthy coping thing, it creates this false sense of relief. And when we feel this relief, dopamine and endorphins are released in the brain. That's why we do stuff like, overeating or use substances, or some people do self-harm. Yeah. And that's just a short pleasure. So, as I said, then there will be these negatively consequences, and you will feel this guilt and this shame. So, it's really, really important, darling, that you heal trauma inside of you. Please promise me that you will look into this, because it has a big impact. And if you don't heal the trauma, then you can probably end up in a narcissistic relationship once again, even that you know the red flags now and all the things to look for. Because the thing is with the body, that even something is unhealthy for us, it finds some sort of calmness in the unhealthy stuff until we heal it. So, please promise me that you will look into this, and then I'm sure your life will change. Yeah, but it's going to be hard work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. No. Yes, I had to do this really brief sound video. As always, take care and stay safe.